Hey everybody, and welcome to another Destiny Movie Night Hangout. I'm your host here today, Mike, and the movie we're looking at today is the movie Whiplash. I'm here with Victor, June, and Fidelis. Hey guys,
Hey,
Hello.
how's everybody doing
Hi.
today?
Fine, thank
cool,
you.
fine.
Awesome, awesome. So, for those of you who haven't watched the movie Whiplash, I'll give a little bit of background. So basically, it's about a drummer who's going to the top music school in the United States, and specifically, he is very much all about being the best drummer in the world. He wants the recognition and the prestige of being one of the best. He idolizes a lot of the other drummers who are regarded as some of the greats of their time. Now, what makes this movie so interesting is the relationship the student has with the teacher, and for that matter, the relationship the teacher has with all his students, as he's very much got that perfectionist character point in place where he's just willing to do whatever it takes to push his students to get to perfection. Though maybe I should address, maybe he's not willing to do whatever it takes. Whatever he believes is necessary that it takes is probably more correct way to phrase it. And through a series of scenes, we see just extreme actions that are taken in order to try to get the result he's looking for. You could say, well, he's very much strong in his emotions, in which he uses, and fear being like a key point in which he tries to get people to perform to their best of abilities. It's interesting seeing the main character, his relationship with drumming as like a passion versus an obsession, lines between both those points. And what's also you could say is admirable in the movie is basically his willingness to keep going and not give up on himself in terms of his playing of the drum. In going through that, we see definitely a process in which he walks in terms of, having some relationships with himself that are not necessarily aligned in the best of ways. So definitely some trials and tribulations throughout as it goes. But rather than me just explain the whole movie scene by scene, let's open the floor to our guests here today, and let's start with you, Victor. What what jumped out at you the most in this movie?
Yeah, I would say it was one scene when he was sitting in his room and he was practicing some form of drumming technique, and he started to bleed in his fingers, and because he was drumming so fast and practicing so intensely, and you could see how he was like in a lot of pain, yet still he just continued. And I thought that was like a cool example of how you can accept and allow ideals, because that is basically what he was going towards. Like, he had an ideal in his mind, an idea of how it was supposed to sound, how his body was supposed to perform, etc. And when he got that ideal in his mind, and that was everything that existed for him, what happened was that he started to compromise his physical well-being, and he lost basically touch with his body, like didn't listen to how his hands were feeling when they started to bleed, and also didn't allow himself to express himself with his body, because that would be a different thing from practicing and trying to master a particular ideal. So that was what stood out a lot for me, this how aiming for an ideal compromises one's physical, one's relationship with the physical.
That's an interesting point, Victor. It reminds me of like a somewhat popular phrase you could say in a lot of cultures in terms of work ethic regarding developing a point, is the phrase of no pain, no gain, where like this guy literally like took that point to extreme measures, and when you really think about it, it's kind of ridiculous how, we want to develop, condition our body to do particular things, but at the same time we're willing to like sacrifice the well-being of the body in that process. And really what it shows is like a disconnect between that mind-body being relationship there, where it's kind of like, wow, the body's just a bag of meat to punch on, or keep going with it, and eventually through abuse it will get stronger. um, yeah, that's definitely a cool point to point out, and especially the idea within the ideals. Yeah, cool. I saw that point too. I'm glad you brought that up. How about you, June? What was like the big point that stood out for you in this movie?
I would like to continue on with
Victor.
Victor
Okay, cool.
because, yeah, because my experience is my piano teacher has got a stick, right? And so I distanced myself from the piano and from music. I did not know how to sing. Everyone saying, no, I'm out of tune. So let's get out from there and let's say, imagine that I actually found a teacher, which during my adult life, I thought I found a teacher that will really teach me how to play piano. And I talked to her and said it still didn't resonate with me. But what if it did resonate? And then I pushed through and I became the virtuoso, the pianist, right? Is that the ideal? So looking at what Victor said, the ideal versus the idea that you push through. Um, and now looking at where I'm at, where I actually taught myself. And one day I said, through a chat with you guys, I said, there's one point that I want to transcend, and it's music. And one day I just started tapping on surfaces. I said, that's a tune. I mean, what's wrong with that? So I did, and then I was able to first come up with the lyrics, and then these different tunes, even if in the normal sense they wouldn't be like music that is composed properly, for me it is, wow, we're missing all these different kinds of tunes. And then I put it together. No one's there to actually like that, but after a while, now I have about maybe 5 or 10 followers, people I don't even know. So it's this um, belief that no one will like it anyway. And also, why should I make something and create something so that people will like it? I'm questioning that starting point, because to me that's not real. What's real to me is the enjoyment that I got out of the whole thing is immense.
Cool. So what you're saying is you basically started making some music that was like totally new to you. That cool. Um, I would perhaps and I think I see where you're going with that is just through you making music that you would like, you're seeing that others will like it too. But it's from the starting point of view of you.
But not really. I don't really
No?
like it. I didn't like it. But I thought, hey, why don't I just not judge this?
Okay.
And let's see what happens. I know the worst thing that can happen is they'll poke something on me, like throw a stone on me. But I'm in the internet, they can't do that. So I said, hey, let's push through this.
Okay, cool. And so what would you call your music that you created, June? Like
That's the question. It doesn't belong to any of them. So
cool.
one day I'll come up with something. But
Cool. So would you say you're very much in your experimentation phases with your music creation at this point?
what I can say is that, whenever you get into creation, life supports you in ways that you don't know about, ways
Right.
that is out of your programming. I mean, so to me, that is exciting to see
Yeah.
that unfold. And even if I don't succeed from a perspective of the normal concept of success, I am in that moment very successful.
Definitely. And so one more question for you about that. You said in the beginning you didn't really like what it was you're creating, but it sounds like now that there's definitely a joy, there's an enjoyment coming through of what it is that you've been doing.
Yeah. So I wouldn't judge, or I wouldn't conceptualize or have an idea of what it is, what joy is, because all we know is joy as the polarity opposite of maybe sadness, right?
Okay.
But without that, what would joy be? It's immense. It's unmeasurable. That means you're gonna push yourself to your utmost potential without even trying. It's just like it's beautiful.
Cool. So just to clarify for the viewers, there, it does seem like there is an enjoyment coming through from you with what you're doing here. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Don't tell me you're not enjoying what you're
No,
doing here.
no, I do. In fact, I have a rap for you.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, you wanna spit this rap right here, right now, or do you want to save it for later?
I leave it for later.
All right, the suspense is building in this hangout already. Nice. Hey, Fidelis. So, would you like to add on to anything June or Victor has said, or would you just like to share something else entirely different?
Yeah, I'll add on the point of enjoyment that came up in when you were speaking.
Cool.
Basically, for for me, when I watch the movie, I see the band members. You know, if you look at their faces, um, you know, especially when the conductor comes into the room, they're all very tense. You can see they're quite fearful, and they're you know in a constant state of like, oh, I better not make a mistake. Better not make a mistake. And and I look at it, you know, what is the point then of playing music? For me, the point of playing music is of enjoyment. It's a it's a it's a passion. So to stand in a room and be in a constant state of fear, you know, there's like those guys do not enjoy playing,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
yeah, they don't enjoy it. So it's understandable if you're in that kind of position because they were part of the um, like the top band, so they had to be really good. And in there is that competing aspect of it, but but still, music should be about it's something you enjoy doing. It shouldn't be something you fear, like those poor guys in that movie. Shame.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's kind of funny, well, in a tragic sort of sense that that would be like the starting point of like trying to create something awesome is working with like here's our platform of how we're going to try to create something great is by having like a terrible time the whole way through and then hope the end result is amazing because it's like there's a complete contrast to that point which you're trying to achieve. I mean, I would that you could. This really showcases the point there of the director there of that ensemble, the teacher in so many ways, because that was his primary motivating point. Is like, okay, I'm gonna try to get you guys to play better. Where maybe playing how he saw it as playing good or playing perfect is the point of fun, and that everything that's less than that is not fun which to me really showcases, and I think you would agree with me, is just how limiting he was making that entire process the whole way through. Because the guys wanted to be there because underlying, they obviously do have some sort of like regard, enjoyment for music, and they want to be at that top level. But at the same time, it didn't, like you said, didn't look to be too much fun there at all. Like in fact, the exact opposite, which is, I mean, obviously it was a movie and whatnot, but I know for myself and personal experiences, I could relate to playing sports at a competitive level, where sometimes the practices that you would have with the coach, the fun kind of gets lost in it there because it's all about trying to get the result and motivating you to work hard to get the result through just kind of yelling at you and saying, like a slave kind of thing, like whipping you kind of thing, like go faster, or I'm going to keep whipping you kind of thing, which, yeah, that's pretty silly, really. June, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, when you said, there's this teacher trying to whip you and say, go faster, and you say, oh no, oh, it hurts, stop, stop. And then later on you say, I'm enjoying it. Come on, all right, okay, I'm gonna be successful, more. What does it remind you of? Energy buildup.
Mm.
And then boom, success. Well, is that success really?
Wow, yeah, that I mean, like a sacrifice the whole way is like how much are you willing to kill yourself in order to sell yourself off as like the newfound success?
And
Which,
also the
go ahead.
another point to the whole competitive thing is if you look at professional musicians, many pianists or violinists, those guys practice at least 6 hours every day to be as good as they are.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and many of them start when they're children. And they are often driven by their parents to become very good at a particular instrument so that they can, become successful and have a career in it. So they kind of do it as a forceful survival kind of thing, as opposed to something you should enjoy.
Right. That's
Because
go ahead.
yeah, it's quite, what's the word, unfortunate that joy just gets sucked out from them from a young age
Definitely.
to just to compete.
I I can totally relate to that the specific point that you mentioned. Not that I'm a professional piano player or that I practice 6 hours a day, but I started when I was like a young child. My parents thought, piano playing that would be a good point to develop a music background because they say, piano can reading the music through the piano can relate to the other instruments very well. Um, but the whole process that I went through with it sucked. Like my piano teacher was like this old lady who seemed like she didn't have any ability to relate to me as a child or what I thought was fun or cool or interesting. And my parents weren't educated about piano, and from my perspective, they didn't seem like it was a fun thing to play for themselves. So it was like, here, you need to play the piano, and there was nothing fun about the process of it. I would go to this piano teacher who was not fun at all, in my opinion, and then I would have like piano homework for like an hour every day as like the way I'm supposed to practice. And you know, threw in that like every once in a while I'd want to like hit the keys in particular ways and move them around, and I would get yelled at because like my mom or dad would come in and be like, "Is that how the piano teacher told you to play?" And I mean, sometimes I would lie and be like, "Yeah, that's what I'm working on here today." But that eventually they caught on to that like my chaotic movements with the piano were not. Deemed appropriate, and that so then it was like even more like stranglehold on like how it is I'm supposed to go about the piano. And I guess the way I was introduced to it, there wasn't really like a lot of real specific dialogue with me in terms of like how to develop or how I could expand and make things up my own. It was kind of like, you need to learn this, and we're going to play this song and this, that, whatever. And I didn't really have much connection to any of these songs I was playing. which made it even more boring because I didn't even understand like who these guys were. And I mean, thinking back about it now, it was like, yeah, I was looking at some Mozart stuff or Beethoven, but I didn't have any connection even to what their music was per se, which to me these just seem like really bizarre names because nobody in my reality had names like that or anything, and it just made it this like far out seemingly weird thing that I just lost a lot of interest into it because it was basically the underlying starting point of my playing the piano was a point of force, and yeah, that was kind of unfortunate because I kind of I was interested, I thought it would be cool to learn it, but as a young child I didn't really have the vocabulary to express myself at the same time, and I just developed like a strong like distaste towards it because of the law and order that was structured around my playing.
I guess in that perspective, I was very lucky because my mother played the piano. She was really good at it. So, I mean, I can't remember any time that she forced me to play the piano. It's just like kind of, she always played it every day. So it's like, I also want to learn. So I also had a piano teacher, but she was actually quite fun.
Nice. Yeah, no,
So there was never that like you said, that forceful, or it was I could do everything at my own pace, and I could at home just play random stuff, have fun with it, and
uh,
yeah,
that sounds pretty awesome. I mean,
it
it
was.
got to the point where for myself even it was like there was a clock that was like set up specifically with like a timer on it. This was a number of years ago, so the clock was very, mechanical in its nature. It was like this big timer clock on top of the piano, and my parents would like set the clock and then it would go off, and that would be a thing for me is like, oh, like can I move a minute here or two there to speed up this time, because it was such like an agony like thing of like, oh, you're on the clock, you have to just go through this, not really a lot of freedom or whatnot. And it became a point of oh, I can't do the other things that I like or seem to have more freedom within because I have to do this hour of piano because there's been an investment in me taking piano lessons from this teacher who's supposedly good that I do not like. And if anything, like it may be the only thing I really got out of it was how to, develop my manipulation tactics, because I remember I was like, I hate this, but my parents aren't monitoring me the whole time while I'm playing. So what I ended up doing was like I got like a tape recorder, and I recorded myself playing like my shitty piano, like because I wasn't very good and I didn't like it, and these exercises were pretty crappy in my opinion. And so I did went through the exercises doing like the whatever, and I recorded like a lesson, and then that became the thing that what I do is when I go into the piano room, and my parents, they wouldn't want to come in and listen to me closely. They'd just be like, hey, he's got to go do that practice. I'd put on my like tape recording, and then I would screw around doing something else so that they would think I was playing the piano, and they were none the wiser for a long while.
Yeah, I mean, this point is quite interesting, I think, because it really shows us how we kind of destroy our relationship to points we could potentially enjoy, and it's like through enforcing a mental abstract idea on it, because it probably it would have been a lot different for you, Mike, if your parents would have been like, okay, here is a piano, or would you like a synthesizer, or maybe what do you want to do? We don't really care. I mean, because then you could sort of find that. I don't know what makes it so fun, but I think part of it is that you can be creative within it. Like you can find your own and develop your own thing. And when you're not allowed to do that, it just feels like suffocation.
Totally, totally. That looking back at it, that's totally how I would describe it. Is because definitely there was like an interest towards the piano and seeing like the different range of sounds that could be made and how you could link things together. Um, the one time out of like the whole year, and I played piano for like a few years, that I enjoyed the piano was at Christmas time because I could relate to those songs because they would be around at Christmas time, and it was like, oh, okay, and I wanted to learn them, and I learned them pretty easily because it was like I was interested. Um, but yeah, as a general point, there was a lot of enforcement placed on me that kind of prevented me from, being so open about it. We just a moment here, guys. We got a question that came in here from Anton Fernando, and for anybody else that's watching at the moment, there's a live Q&A feed, so feel free to ask questions. Anton's comment here is that in regards to what we were talking about, the piano playing relationship. He says that's a very mechanical way of teaching humans to be a musician. Goes back to survival, I suppose, survival of the fittest. June, would you like to give perspective on that?
Well, yeah, I can see now that it's because of my mom paying for my piano lesson. So yeah, definitely it's surviving as a daughter of someone who pays for me to learn that. So that's a survival point for me.
Interesting. Victor?
I just think it's so fascinating why we have created this idea that learning must be boring, because like when you describe that point with the piano, that was the feel I got, like your parents saw this as a core, like something you had to do, and then it was like boring immediately.
Yeah.
And, we do that with so many things, like dishes. Oh, dishes are boring. Now I have to do the dishes. Or cleaning. But there are so many ways we could do things. For example, dancing or singing while doing the dishes, or something like that.
Totally. I mean, that's a great point there. It's like in reflecting on my parents in that particular instance, their intention, you could say, was good at the core of it. Like they thought, okay, this is a skill he could learn that would be beneficial to him learning. But there was kind of like a disconnect about it because, well, of their own relationship towards it. Like they weren't really interested in doing it themselves or like seeing the fun about it per se. And so, in their thinking was maybe a bit more rigid in terms of like, well, we just take them to the teacher does it, da 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 da. Like it was all kind of very logical in their mind, but not very, free flowing or like open to interpretation or expansiveness. And there wasn't a lot of dialogue with me as a contributing factor within all that, which is kind of interesting. And I think, like you're mentioning, how this can relate to so many other points, is that we see the practicality of specific things being done, and I think what just gets lost is within the whole adulthood, if you will, is there's sort of like that loss of like that fun-natured funniness of the childhood, so much so because generally, I would say, as a common acceptance, I wouldn't say it's rule across the board, but generally it seems like as people age, because the teachers are the elders, and so much so it's there can be a rigidity or like a structure, or that like life isn't all fun and games. It's about being serious, like work, da 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 da, and that there's just a disconnect in so many of these relationships that we participate in, so that kind of like we're doing them like automatons, if you will, where Autobots, you could say, where it's just like da 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 da, but like kind of like the Walking Dead zombie throughout those experiences, where we're not really like present. It's just kind of like, oh, let me get through this motion, this action, so I can get to the one or the few things that I really do enjoy. instead of seeing how we can enjoy ourselves at every moment as we move from thing to thing.
Yeah,
Or Victor, go ahead.
I would just like to add to that that
Yeah,
you know what you said about how your parents approached it.
yeah,
Because in a way you can relate that to the system as well, in like the world system and how that functions. Because in many ways it's like, okay, we implement this law. Okay, cool. you, so there's like it works on a mind level, but there is no substance in it, like no actual life given to it.
Yeah.
totally, totally. I mean, that's rather a profound observation there in looking at like the laws that we have here. Because I mean, when you think about it, somebody was saying the other day to me within the fields of law is that like no one person seems to understand all the laws, and there's just so many laws, and yet the laws are like what dictates, is governing the movement of everything here, and yet we have so much of it, and it's just funny to me because, like you said, there's just really seems to be like no substance to it in terms of like, like everybody embodies it, like principles in which we live in the best of ways. It's just kind of like these are the directions, you must follow them. Da 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 da. Don't step out of the line. This is how it goes. Blah blah blah. Fidelis, would you like to add on to any of this discussion where we've taken it, or would you like to take it in a different direction altogether?
Good question. Just what was I looking at?
Okay, you.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Okay, the guy in I'm constantly looking at how this guy pushes himself to be the best. He's got all those posters of the drummers that are super fast, because that seems to be his main goal, is to push himself to be better than, or to be so good as those guys, to be super fast. And every time he plays, he kind of looks at the conductor, and the guy is just like saying, he's not giving his approval to say, yes, good job. And that brings me to the point that where the drummer and the conductor sit together, and the conductor says, I forgot the exact words, but the basic was to say good job is like the worst thing you can do.
I remember exactly. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a valid point, because if you're a musician and you play, this kid's playing, and he's constantly waiting for this conductor to say good job, but he never does. And so it's kind of cool, but in a way, you don't want to be playing for the approval of other people. You don't want to sit in front of judges and let them tell you how good you are. You should be playing, based on if you're not satisfied with your level of skill, then you simply improve on it. But it's just that point of, you shouldn't go and play based on the approval of other people. It should be a self-expression.
Right. Um, I have some perspective to add to that. I also very much enjoyed that point in the movie where he says, like as soon as you give like the compliment there, that's fucking it. Like it's over. Like Buddy's not going to get any better because he's all uppity about his self, feeling super good. Um, I do see a little bit of credence to it, but like you said, there's more to it than that. And I think the teacher in this movie could have been more effective with more of his students and bring about better if they made the criticisms constructive, or saying like, listen, I'm super focused and specific in what I'm looking for here. Uh, you guys are obviously super focused and specific here because you're all about, perfectionism, because they're playing, you have to consider that, they're playing at like a very elite level, and part of the fun in playing at that elite level is being, perfectionist, and learning like the specific intricacies of the minute differences in playing a note this way or that way or that way, and them all being harmony and playing like on the exact same key, tempo, all that jazz. But like the way in which he does it is where he's like the authority that's just raining down shit on everybody the whole way through the process. And it could have been like it could have been like a melee of fun for all, where like when he's basically giving constructive criticism to somebody, like, or shitting on them in a way, like that could have been fun and funny for everybody else involved. By the way he prefaced like his teaching style is that we're very direct with one another, we don't sugarcoat. It's not to get all emotionally distraught over talking straight to one another here, but at the same time, I'm going to speak very frankly with you, or where I think this is, and I'll tell you what's good, and I'll tell you what's bad, and let's be playful with it here, and we want to push each other to get the best. Where he wasn't really playful about the bad. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but for myself, in watching the movie, like typically I allow myself to be in a rather playful state in terms of like how I'm receiving the information I'm looking at. So I rather, like as a spectator, rather very much enjoyed his strong language and his like strong criticisms that he was exhibiting onto the members. Like I found like the ridiculousness to be funny. Obviously, that's the context. Like I'm watching the movie, and the joke was not well received by the other people participating in the room. But I think, given the right explanation, it could be made more into, like belly laughter with everybody participating, because there's a lot that can be said when you have a good laugh at something, when you realize a mistake, as like, oh wow, I see it, see how ridiculous this was, and then can take it forward and can have a laugh and learn from it and grow at the same time, instead of it being a constantly perpetuated state of like just getting shit on with shit you don't like, as to hopefully grow something new that's good. June, would you like to add to that?
I would like to say that, as a director, for me to be able to produce or to direct a movie, I have to push myself to my utmost potential, so that I know how to push my characters. And from the point of view of the teacher, the music teacher, I would say he has to also push himself to his utmost potential, so that he will know how to push the students to actually expand themselves into their utmost potential. And as a student, I can even direct my teacher to push myself first to expand to my utmost potential, that the teacher would be able to do that too. And then from all this, we can all profit. So money is not a problem also,
That's an interesting point, June. Like showcasing the responsibility not also on the teacher but also on the student, so that there's no real blame point going on here. That both parties, make up the synergy of the relationship so much so. And definitely in this movie we saw where, okay, the teacher is so much so the authority, he's in the power position so much so, and the students are in fear for the most part. They don't want to lose their spot. He does showcase that PowerPoint where, oh, I'm going to give the spot to so-and-so, or I'm going to give the spot to so-and-so, which just kind of, stimulates the whole fear power play. But you don't see a lot of the guys in the room being like, yo, teach, you're you're being, an idiot, or like, what the fuck. You don't see like any of that stuff when the collective, which makes up the room, is all like the guys, that are brothers in arms, if you will. But at the same time, they're totally like willing to just remain quiet while the teacher throws one under the bus after another, and eventually they're all run over, and they're all kind of like but at the same time they all want each other's spot, so it created like a rift within it where there's not really any solidarity amongst them, yet the solidarity amongst the group would showcase how the group dynamics can direct and influence like the best teaching. So yeah, that's definitely a cool point to see, because as the movie goes on and you get to the end, like the main character, he gets pushed around and whatnot. You finally see that where he's kind of like, you know what, like fuck you, like you've been just kind of being a dick. You threw me under the bus. Uh, no, thank you. Like I'm gonna come out here and play, and you're just gonna like shut up, watch me, and it's pretty much where the player came into his own, and that was regarded as like the success point. But that could have been like very early on with amongst all the kids being like, dude, what are you doing here? Like, we're all here to play, have fun. Like, do you not get it? Like, is music not fun for you? You don't look very fun when you have like that vein that's about to explode out of your neck or your head. Like, you look like you're gonna have a heart attack. And turn the tables around a little bit. So, yeah, very cool example, June. Just on the point of like self-authorization, I would say too, as to create the world in a way that's best for yourself and others by the direct engagement you have in the relationships with those you are directly working with. Awesome. Does anyone else want to add on to that? Victor?
No, nothing to that point.
Cool. June, you mentioned that you had that rap. We're getting later on in the hangout. Let's flesh that out.
All right, let's do it. Whiplash is a movie that's about you and me. Let's learn from it as a family. Question why we need bullies to succeed. The fear to fall is behind it all. Self-forgive the fear, breathe, and bring yourself back here. Express yourself. Use common sense, bypass the rules, and see for yourself. Tap on the surfaces. Hear all the sound in the universe. Realize they all have a tune. We can't change the rules, for not one sound is out of tune. Without judgment, we can see clearly it's not just about do, re, mi, baby. That's it.
That was awesome. Nice. Oh wow, man! You said so much within that like verse, and that really encompassed. I mean, everything we just said there. Like that. That's super cool. Really showcases like how we being specific with our sounds, our words, we can put something together that encapsulates so much.
Can I say something about that rebelliousness part?
Okay. Yeah.
Where
Sure.
where where success is defined within being a rebel of the system, right? Because this guy, he actually did that, and he broke the rules, right? But within that, he played Caravan, which is another piece that he copied from someone else. It's still a copy, so it's a pushing yourself to your utmost potential doesn't involve copying, though. What I'm saying is we should redefine the way we look at enjoyment in that way, where only when we rebel about something can we truly succeed. It's not about that. It's about changing yourself and using common sense and enjoying within that.
Well said, Jim. I totally agree with you. Um, I think we've covered quite a lot here. I mean, I think we could take it in different directions, maybe offsuit, but I think maybe this is a good spot to wrap up the hang up here for today. But before we do, I'll give each of you one last final word, final thought for our viewers here today. And Fidelis, let's start with you.
Well, for Sorry, I thought my mic was muted. Well, for me to end off, I would say, if you wanna, maybe you're a starting musician, maybe you've played for a very long time. I would say it's through that, remember that it's okay to make mistakes. Um, it shouldn't be a fear thing like it is in the Whiplash movie. Obviously, if you're playing professionally, there's a competitive part, and it's a whole different story. But if you're just doing it for yourself, it should be something you enjoy doing, and not out of fear.
Awesome. June, how about you?
For me, watch out what you get from movies and make sure that you correct whatever you see there and make it a reference point for what you want to question in life, questioning it, and also then changing yourself within that rather than just being directed by movies like that.
Awesome. And Victor?
Yeah, and I would also say, like when practicing or learning an instrument, to make it your own, and in that, no, don't have any boundaries or rules. Like, be unconditional in approaching the instrument, and it will be a lot more enjoyable than trying to become something like an ideal. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, like don't forget yourself while you're playing the instrument.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself. That ties in with we had another comment come in from Anton Fernando, and he just oh, actually we had another one come in. So let me read them both for you here now. He says he agrees with us, basically turning humans and systems into machines without any substance. So yeah, that totally correlates with the point of be here while you play, and yeah, check yourself before you wreck yourself. What he also has just said is being a musician is a great thing. This I miss so much. With my parent, this I miss so much. Wish my parents pushed me into piano or anything like how Mike, your parents pushed. Be a musician. Interesting perspective, Anton. A point recently through my relationship with words and just I like to write and I like to look at, analyze words in different ways and see how they could be sounded or written and spelled. And something that has become so awesome in so many ways for myself, and I see it's here for everybody, is that as human beings, we really are music makers in so many ways. It's a sound game in so many ways because, well, one, we get to talk, and if you just even think about like what our body's made up of, it's so many different parts, and a number of those parts are the organs, and organs are instruments. All the parts in different ways are instruments, and they're working in relationships together, and so our everyday movement all the time is our musical orchestra, if you will, because it's so much happening together at once for us to posture whatever position it is as our standing state, or whether we're laying down or leaning back, or whether we're talking or not talking. But there's so many ways in the movements and the relationship dynamics of our every happening from every moment, and this correlates with like the point Victor brought attention to, which was so cool, was the recognition of like who we are within whatever it is we do. So we check ourselves before we wreck ourselves again within points of like doing things that we define as boring. I mean, I think the creative juices or the creative point within that is to see, well, why is this particular thing that I'm participating within boring? And I can relate specifically to that point of seeing myself in moments where I would define something as boring, where it was kind of like a holy shit realization, because I realized, like, wait a second, when I'm saying this is boring, I'm saying I'm boring as that, because it's me in relationship as that, and the point isn't so separate from me. It's like me as that, And so it's about me reflecting it back to me and seeing how I can change my starting point within that. And so, develop my play work, if you will, is how I can move and enjoy myself within that point, because ultimately it comes back to ourselves, and that's where enjoyment originates from, is ourselves as a point of self-enjoyment. And a cool reference I see with the point of self-enjoyment is that it's always shared. It's a complementary action, just kind of like this hangout here. It was complementary words shared each other. Like we each add to the point, like a 1 + 1 + 1 continuation. Go on, the song and dance goes on. And so with that said, I would just like to thank all you guys for being here today. It's been an awesome pleasure to share with you here today, and I hope to see you guys on again at some point. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, and just one more message for those tuning in. Next Hangout will be Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and the movie topic will be on the movie The Big Short. New movie, it's come out. It's still in theaters. I think you can get it online somewhere also, if you know the right places to look. Anywho, we will see you guys all back here. Well, maybe not you guys specifically, but we'll see everybody back here next week. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye.